All right. It is 7 o'clock. I'm going to call us to order. This is the regular meeting of the Columbus School District. Welcome to 2019. Hard to believe. Our last meeting of the first semester of this school year. That's hard to believe. And Mary is absent tonight. Mary and Julie are both excused. They are out of town. Mike, do you want to call the roll quick?
Barb Hesselberg,
Here.
Kelly,
Present.
Bill,
Here.
Mike O'Brien's here, Cindy.
Yes. So with their absences, we still have a quorum present. And can I have verification that the meeting's been noticed?
It has.
All right. And a reminder that the work we do tonight follows the district's mission statement, that we empower students to be community, career, and college ready. We know that really is our ends one mission statement. I do not have any requests for changes to the agenda, so I'm looking for a motion.
I move we approve the agenda as written. Second.
Motion by Bill, second by Kelly to approve the agenda as posted. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public conversation, recognition, and correspondence. We'll start by recognizing some of our gifts and donations this evening. We have a donation from LIGO for $5,000 toward our track project that was completed last summer. We have 2 donations toward a new middle school scoreboard, $1,667 from Columbus Courtside Organization, and then $1,660 from the girls basketball backcourt club. So thank you to them for that improvement. And 1, 2, 3. Did I miss one?
Nope, you got him.
Those are 3, sorry. I have an extra link here that I was trying to follow. So thank you very much, as always. Contributions from the community toward our various projects really help us to move things forward, keep our budget on track, and stretch that budget as far as we can toward special projects. So we surely appreciate their continued support on that. And then it is School Crossing Guard Week. January, are we technically the second week? I guess technically we're the second full week of January, is when we recognize school district crossing guards. It's a unique role in that they're actually employed by the city of Columbus. It's the responsibility of the city and the police department to make sure that we are staffed and work with the district on making sure that our safety plan has those persons in the right spot, make sure we have our regularly scheduled personnel, as well as plenty of relief people. And sometimes that means that we have some of our police officers covering intersections to make sure that our kids get to school safely. So the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction at the time was State Superintendent Tony Evers, now Governor Tony Evers, issued a proclamation, and so we'll start with that. Whereas Wisconsin's adult school crossing guards provide an invaluable service in helping to ensure the safe passage of our youngest, most vulnerable pedestrians, children walking between home and school. And whereas adult school crossing guards typically serve with a dedication that discounts the rigors of harsh weather, split shifts, and heavy traffic. And whereas for more than 5 decades, adult school crossing guards have served communities across Wisconsin, and that service has helped to drive down the rates of young pedestrian deaths and injuries, despite increases in traffic volume. And whereas adult school crossing guards add to the effectiveness of the student safety patrol members with whom they often serve and whose activity they help direct. And whereas adult school crossing guards help reinforce in the minds of the young people they assist the importance of traffic hazard identification and safe street crossing behavior. Therefore, be it resolved that January 14th through the 18th, 2019 be declared Adult School Crossing Guard Recognition Week in the state of Wisconsin. Again, signed by then School Superintendent Tony Evers. And so we wanted to do a recognition for our crossing guards who could be here this evening. And I see we also have Patrick Vandersanden, City Administrator, and Acting Police Chief Dennis Weiner here to give our acknowledgements as well. And interesting enough, tomorrow morning doesn't look to be a real splendid day to stand on the corner. So just as the postman says rain, sleet, snow, or hail, you guys are out there as well. And we really appreciate that work, being that smiling face for our kids as they walk to school, making sure that you're giving them that little encouragement. Keep going, don't dawdle, you're going to be late, you're running out of time. And dealing with, as the proclamation says, the ever-increasing traffic going through the major highways of Columbus. All of us have been through the Farnham Park Avenue intersection, the Dickinson Boulevard, James Street intersection in the morning, and School Street and Park Avenue. Or is it Ludington there? I never remember. All busy intersections, all essential places that we appreciate your help. So, do you want to
I will.
distribute?
Yeah.
And I will
So-
read off the names of who we have.
So the school district has a small token of our appreciation and also some cards for each of you. Mrs. Robertson's second grade class was busy creating thank you cards for our crossing guards, so we also have those for you. And I think Dennis would like to say just a couple of words. If Dennis, you want to come up to the podium?
Yeah. The little talky one in the middle, the little two people.
That one?
That's the one, yep. You're
Okay,
on.
great. Good evening. For those that don't know me, I'm Lieutenant Weiner, currently the acting chief of police here in Columbus. And the proclamation that was read covered a lot of the sentiments that I wanted to say. I'm just going to say a few things in lieu of that. The crossing guards are a very vital part of the children's safety and also the motorist safety as well. Keeping their eyes open all the time, looking out for the kids, looking out for the motorists as well. We know it's a dangerous job. We work on the roadways as well, dealing with traffic, so we know firsthand it's very dangerous. And they need to be recognized, and I'm glad that this week and this opportunity came up to be recognized because it's very fitting. They're out in the bad weather, they're out in the cold weather, they're out no matter what because the kids have school, unless if it's really, really bad. So I think we often take for granted a lot of things in our community and don't really appreciate a lot of things maybe the way we should. And I think this was a great opportunity. I appreciate being asked and the recognition that we're having in honor of this weekend, our crossing guards, and I want to say to them thank you for what you've done for the children and for the community. It is noticed and it is appreciated.
Great. So if you're present, we recognize all of you, but please come up and we'll do a quick picture afterwards. So, Jerry King. And I apologize, about 2 years ago I could have said who is on every corner, but I don't remember where you all are now. So, Gloria Slade. Joy Vandersanden. Phyllis Pauls. Lucas Dara. Oh, sorry. Rick Velker. Christy Nelson. Margaret Smith. Cheryl Hoffman. Suzanne Renoza. I hope I said it right. Judy Lewis. And Susan Brisky. This is where we turn sideways.
Here we go. All right.
Now your camera's broke.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So, and thanks again to our police department and Patrick. If you follow along with our discussions the last few months as we've been reviewing our school safety and our transportation plan, you guys have been an integral part of making sure that we have people positioned where they need to be. So we appreciate your continued work with us to accomplish those things. We couldn't do it without you. So thanks. Good. Do you have any other recognitions or correspondence from the board? All right. So we're going to move right into our board business. E2 monitoring report. And again, these are, our board business is the work that the board does that will require future action by the board. Primarily, it focuses on board policy work. And our monitoring reports are scheduled, we usually have an ends and an executive limitations, one or more every month. So it's our first ELA, English Language Arts, since our review of interpretations and indicators. I'll shut up now.
All right, so tonight we have our Director of Curriculum Instruction, Becky Schmidt, who's going to review our ENDS, English Language Arts Monitoring Report. And just as a reminder, this is our first ENDS report for English Language Arts since we implemented our new curriculum at the elementary and at the high school for ELA, which was the writing curriculum. And so this will be the results which will contain the writing curriculum, but not the reading that we did for units of study. Okay? So Becky, go ahead.
Sounds good. So on this report, there are 8 indicators, but the first one deals with a large group of our students. It is concerning forward testing and how our 3rd through 8th graders did proficiency-wise in English Language Arts. Last year, overall, when we look at our proficiency against equivalent grade level state proficiencies, our 3rd and 4th grade were unfortunately a little bit below state average. 5th through 8th grade, every single grade level was above state average. When on indicator 2, the difference is that indicator 2 looks at our subgroups of students using at the same grade levels and using the same assessment. When we look at our subgroups on forward, it is a very similar reflection to indicator 1, where our subgroups in grade, our students who are part of different recognized subgroups in grades 3 and 4 are below the state subgroup proficiency at those same grade levels. However, overall subgroup proficiency exceeds state subgroup proficiency overall for district performance on the forward test. Indicators 3 and 4 work with ACT Aspire. And when we're talking about ACT Aspire, we're talking about the state assessment that students take in 9th and 10th grade levels, not the ACT Aspire interim you've heard us talk about that students are taking throughout the school year this year. So on ACT Aspire, the 3 and 4, the indicators talked about Columbus proficiency, meeting or exceeding kind of the state benchmark proficiencies with that in reading and writing. One thing to note is that starting with the release of last year's state ACT Aspire data, the state is reporting writing as part of an overall ELA score. And so we get reading separately, and then for writing, it's encompassed in the ELA score, which is a combination of reading, writing, and ELA. On these indicators, overall and grade 10 are above state average. However, when you look at the report, it is marked unreasonable for progress because grade 9 is slightly below the state average on both reading and ELA. With indicator 4, which is the parallel with the subgroups, one thing of note that's sort of interesting is there are a few subtle differences with subgroups between reading and ELA. So for example, our 10th grade students who are in special education exceeded the state proficiency percentage, or the state percentage meeting on the reading benchmark. However, they did not on the ELA benchmark, which is where writing was. Indicators 5 and 6 on this report directly deal with the ACT, which is the assessment given at the state level for all students in 11th grade. Overall, both reading and writing, which is what these indicators measure on this report, our students are above state average. However, overall, we're above state average, but this is an area where with our students who receive free and reduced lunch and our students who are in special education, we're a little bit below the statewide average composite scores. And then finally, with indicators 7 and 8, these indicators measure student growth using the MAP assessment, which last year was a benchmarking assessment that we used for those grade levels that we gave in the fall, winter, and spring. With these indicators, overall, the majority of students demonstrated growth. And when you look at indicator 7, overall, those percentages are really, really good for students who had that growth from fall to spring. When we look at indicator 8, there is a lesser percentage of growth when we're looking at students who are part of the same subpopulations that we've been looking at through the state assessments. So what this means, kind of what we're doing to address it, because literacy is a journey that we've been on. In the overall sense, as Annette stated at the beginning, the data that you see here is data that reflects really the first year of implementation of units of study writing in progress last year. So we implemented it last school year. This assessment data comes from last school year. Since then, we've implemented units of study reading at K8. We've implemented units of study phonics at K2. And so there are additional curriculum improvements that are going on currently as we speak, working towards our overall literacy program. We are continuing to provide professional development for our staff and ongoing coaching support from our literacy consultant. One of the things that we'll be continuing to work on improving, particularly at Columbus Intermediate, is increasing the amount of internal support that we're providing to our teachers in those grade levels. Because back to the beginning of the report, really last year, 3rd and 4th grade is an area that we want to provide a little bit more to, and work towards getting those scores so all of our grade levels are above state average. The overall theme that no matter what the assessment, I think is a common one, but when we're looking at our subpopulations of students, we have work to do there. We continue to work with our staff on a co-teaching model of support and provide coaching and support that way for teachers who are in a co-teaching arrangement within their classrooms. We also have a consultant who supports our students who are English language learners, as well as our staff who work with those students. And then starting this semester, Columbus Intermediate School and Columbus Middle School are piloting a new multi-leveled system of support program. And so we're working through that pilot process with those two schools. And then just in a change that we'll have to address for upcoming is the indicator 7 and 8 specifically addressed MAP testing, but this year we are not using MAP testing for those grade levels anymore. We're using ACT Aspire interim tests to give us some consistency, so that'll be slight changes that we'll have to make to the indicators for the future. May I answer any questions?
So, Kelly, anything? Bill?
No.
Mike, anything?
No, I mean, just, that middle school support system, just, a lot of extra support there, help. I mean, that's what you're talking
The
about.
MLS, the multi-leveled systems of support. Yep, working on increasing some support options through some different interventions, different staff training, just a whole new procedure of working with data for early identification and making sure that the students who need additional support are getting it readily.
Barb?
I have a question. So could you you went through a lot. This Columbus Middle School, you said the third and the fourth are needing support. How are you providing support for them?
So with third and fourth grade, so this year they would be our current fourth and fifth graders
Sure.
that are over there. Really, besides the multi-leveled systems of support that we're piloting, which will bring additional support
Okay,
because
when you say multi-level, what does that mean?
so it would be looking from, I mean, the first level for any student is going to be core instruction. And then as you continue to work with data and find areas where we want to do some intervention or some
Like
additional
RTI?
supports around there,
Okay.
you know, kind of like the
Okay.
old RTI. You'd use a tiered
Okay,
level. So kind of supports can increase as they're warranted,
Okay.
as needed by the students.
so I know we have Black working with our students, our teachers, right?
Yes.
As a support. Is that at every level at the school, or is it just high school? Where do they support the teachers? Because I know that they were, employed this year.
Yep, in literacy, they're supporting at every level. So they're supporting units of study, K-8, and then they're supporting the engagement model for literacy in English, science, and social studies rooms at the high school level. Additionally, they're working with our staff at K-12 with co-teaching. I keep looking over to Lisa because if she wants or feels the need to jump in on any of that, please feel free.
So how often do they support the teachers and review their teaching patterns or whatever? And how does that work? I'm just curious.
So Black comes in about once a month for 2 days to support the special ed and regular ed teacher teams, co-teaching
Co-teaching,
teams,
okay.
where they're physically in the classroom observing the instruction,
Okay.
and then debriefing with them after. And then following those debriefings, then we have a separate debriefing with the building principal and myself and the coach to kind of think about from more of an administrative level how we can better support students and the teachers in that co-teaching model.
Okay. And so one teacher per month?
No,
No, okay.
oh no, almost over the course of the 2 days, we hit every special ed teacher and their teacher team, K-12.
Okay, so you're focusing on co-teaching?
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to know is, how do the literacy coaches, how do they fit into the equation of coaching the teachers? Where
Our
do they-
literacy coach that
Yeah.
we employ.
How many do you have, one or two?
We have one. We
One,
have
okay.
a district K-12 coach who works with our teachers on a variety of supports, from preparing to go into new units to working with teachers as they individually request. As part of the follow-up process, when the external coaches are in, the internal coaches will be part of the internal coach will be part of the debriefing process with the teacher and the principal. And then from there, a lot of times conversations will spring out for how they can provide support that a staff needs. So it works in a variety of ways. Kind of as a student, you're responsive to their needs. The coach really is responsive to the teacher's needs.
Okay, all right.
Couple questions. You mentioned updating the indicator for 7 and 8 because
Yep.
we're not using maps. Is that just, you're thinking just a change in the tool because now we're using Aspire? And then obviously we're going to have different data, or is there something else that you need us to consider for that?
Nope, I looked at the indicator, Cindy, and I see it as something very simple as, and I'm going to go to that indicator very quickly. So it's 7 and 8, it's going to be as simple as just removing the term on their RIT scores.
scores?
Yes.
And then change that to
To
whatever appropriate.
Correct. Then we can use
Whatever
whatever
appropriate
tool we
tool
can
for
put
the grade
tool in there.
level?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, because we
Okay.
really just want to show growth
Right.
and use whatever tool then we can to show the growth.
Correct. Okay.
The on their RIT score doesn't need to be in there.
Right, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, not a problem. Just so I know and plan ahead and if we needed to actually do anything with that. Okay, and this is, we have K, or not even K8. We have forward testing. This is Cindy's, I never remember which grades get which tests
No
anymore.
problem.
So I always need you to help
Forward
remind us.
assessments.
Forwards through grade 8.
For
And then-
ELA, yes.
and then
3
we-
through 8.
And then we've gone ACT Aspire.
ACT Aspire
which
is 9 and 10.
This is reflecting that is really the third year of data on ACT Aspire, maybe?
Fourth, I
Fourth
think.
year? Okay, so we have that change from 8th grade to 9th grade. 2 different tests, which is an adjustment.
Yeah,
for
ACT
kids.
Aspire was here the year that we had the Badger exam, and then it was the one that stayed the same when Badger was
Yeah,
1 year,
okay.
and then we went to
Okay.
Forward.
And then 11 and 12, obviously, we have the ACT.
Yeah.
So, okay, got it.
Just
Got it.
11 for the ACT. 12th grade does not have a
Right.
required state
They're required
assessment.
to take it their junior year, the ACT. Okay. And so just an observation, I guess, something that jumped at me that I'll share with the board. Looking back at that timeline, we had that first year of ACT Aspire, which was an adjustment for, it's just a change. It's a change in the test. And it's a change in preparing kids for that test. And then from that, we had multiple conversations about adjustments that we were needing to make in curriculum, which started then in year 2. And now we're seeing the improvement from that. We still have areas, like you discussed, subgroups that we've seen in other academic areas as well. But overall, we're seeing the improvement from those adjustments. Is just observation that, I would make on grade levels.
The
So-
last part of this report is kind of concerning, because everything's unreasonable under free and reduced lunch and special education. I don't know how that works into the equation of our test scores and so forth. And why did they go down so badly?
On in indicator 8. Indicator 8 is measuring growth, not proficiency. So it's looking at the percentage of students who scored one thing in the fall and then grew to a higher RIT score, a higher, RIT is just the language that MAP has for their units of measurement. And so you're not seeing proficiency on indicator 7 and 8, you're seeing growth. So the percentage of students who had an upward trend for growth.
And what we were looking for there, Barb, was that 100% of those students would meet their growth goal.
Oh, 100%?
100%. And so what I marked it as was if 75% of that 100% met their growth goal, I marked that as we're making reasonable progress toward that 100%. And so what you'll see there is if we didn't meet 75% of that 100% goal, I marked it as unreasonable, meaning we've got work to do. Okay? So when you see that those unreasonables,
Right.
it's because 75% of that 100% didn't meet that. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay. So we set ourselves a lofty goal.
That's a high
Yeah.
goal.
Yep,
It- it's
but
a
we
high goal.
want, because we do have that gap, we want to accelerate the growth
Gotcha.
to make sure that that gap closes.
Any other questions? So let me ask you guys, how do you want to handle adjustment to the indicators for 7 and 8? Based on what we've heard, maintaining that phrasing, growth on the RIT scores.
That would not be for this report.
No, not this
Okay.
group, going forward, is not going to be a best fit. So I'm gonna throw out a suggestion here, and that's simply that we make a notation, you know, that we're all aware that those two indicators will be updated in the next cycle of monitoring reports. We don't have to go through an approval process. We just know that that's gonna be updated and that the appropriate tool will be identified for those. Is that fair enough?
So you're saying we're gonna change the goal to bring it down? Is that what you're saying?
No,
We're gonna rewrite that?
No, for,
No.
for 7 and 8, Barb, on the indicator, it's regarding the MAPS assessment.
Oh, okay.
We don't
Okay.
use the
And we're
MAPS
not using
assessment,
MAP.
Got it.
so I'm just taking out that RIT portion of
Right.
that.
We need to get the phrasing to align with the testing tool that we're using.
Okay,
It'll be something
So-
as simple as ACT Aspire benchmark score.
sure,
Right.
okay.
So I'd like to
Sounds
let
good.
them just rewrite
Yes.
that and present it with the next report rather than go through a whole approval process for that.
Okay.
The purpose of it is still the same,
Sure.
but it's just changing the language,
Okay.
if that's okay?
That's reasonable.
Yes? All right. Thanks, Becky. And Lisa. I'm sorry, I'm still writing. Can I'll ask now because I don't know them off the top of my head.
Mhm.
Are we going to have the same adjustment for math with that RIT
Yes.
score?
Yes.
I was remembering them being very similar. Okay. Fantastic. Moving on to EL 10, executive limitation for communication and counsel to the board. You're presenting that.
I am. Okay, so the overall executive limitation for this one is that the superintendent shall not permit the board to be inadequately informed in its work. Underneath the umbrella statement, there were 17 subpoints to this report. And so the report in and of itself was fairly lengthy. And what I did for the board is, along with my interpretation, is provided evidence and artifacts for those 17 different subpoints. These were sample, and by no means were they the complete. And I know after 26 pages, you were probably all thinking, did she put, I saw that, Mike. Did she put the entire file cabinet along with this report? But I did not. What I wanted to provide for you for each of the 17 subpoints were just different areas in which I thought these evidence and artifacts would show for you underneath the 17 different subpoints, where we provided information, different areas of education, awareness, different communication to the board that really helps you do what is the important work of the board for the district. And so I'm not going to go through all 17
Thank you.
indicating subpoints here. I hope you've had time to review and look over everything, and I thought best every area was marked as in compliance. And so I thought if you had questions in regards to my evidence or what I chose as artifacts, maybe perhaps that would be the best way to cover it, since it was 26 pages filled with evidence and artifacts for you. Is that okay to do it that way, or did you have questions?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Because can all read and can review the information that's there, and obviously, it's information that's, the board has seen in communications, so, it shouldn't be the first time that we're, looking at those.
No.
So, questions, Kelly? Bill?
I'm good.
Mike?
I'm good too.
Barb? So one observation that I'll just make, because there is a lot of stuff, there's a lot of evidence
Sorry.
there. No, it's okay, it's fine. Because the one thing that really this turns into be is a reference for incoming board members of these are the tools that we're using for communications, these are the methods, and it is a job to follow along. And it is a job. It's hard to keep track of everything. But this becomes a quick reference document, really, for understanding communication between the board and the superintendent. So I appreciate that. I didn't really pick up on that until the second time I read through it, so it's worth mentioning. Okay, any other comments, concerns about EL 10? All right. Moving on to the board response to our study team's recommendations. Way back in December, a month plus 4 days ago, our community study groups presented us their recommendations in 7 areas. And the board was in retreat a couple days after that and reviewed those and drew some conclusions and gave some direction and reached some, I guess, expectations maybe with Annette to be working with the administration on those. So we wanted to just take a minute and do a quick summary of what those are. And then I'll give you an opportunity to update us. In your memo, you've updated us on a lot of it, to date, but the opportunity to share with the community, I guess.
Sure.
Where we're going next with those things. So this is going to be really quick because we've had this summary, but so we had a number of groups that requested a comprehensive facility study. Specifically athletics and co-curriculars, community campus and partnerships, facility infrastructure, energy efficiency maintenance, and performing arts. All thought it beneficial for us to move forward with a facility study plan that was needed in order to really move forward on the 6 priorities established in Launching a Legacy. So Annette is working on developing a plan to proceed with a comprehensive facility study plan. And you can update us in a few minutes on that one. We had 3 groups who were looking for more opportunities for students in the community: athletics and co-curriculars, community campus and partnerships, and performing arts. All thought that there were opportunities for us to expand not only within the schools but within the community. And the board felt that that is something that's expected in the 6 community launch priorities. They're expecting us to offer as much as we can. And so there's not a specific action for us to take at this time, other than continue to develop those opportunities for kids. Communications, the study groups were looking to hire a communications director, and the board felt that it was appropriate to start with Annette just reviewing what our communication plan was and how we can work on streamlining and making sure that we're efficient, whether that's, staff that we have, or we need to, do we need to designate somebody? What are we currently doing? And or bring somebody in. So she'll be reviewing that. Curriculum instruction, the study team was recommended individual learning plans. And we had a lively, an interesting discussion about that, kind of a lively discussion about that. And one observation the board made was that that recommendation didn't align with the statement of need. And the statement of need was directed for individual students' learning, which is really spelled out in their board policy expectations of E2 academic achievement, E3 and E4, and help me out with the language. It is no longer life skills and
Community involvement.
What was that?
community involvement. Did we leave it life skills though?
It's life skills.
It's life skills and community involvement. Sorry. It's not second nature to spit out E3 and E4 titles yet. Working on it. The individual learning plans that were referred to would require the efforts of student services as well as the curriculum department. And so at this point, we felt that our expectations, just like we just talked about in our ELA report, we have work being done to address individual student growth in those academic areas. And right now, that's the appropriate place to have our resources. And the last recommendation was from Safety, Security, and Wellbeing. They were looking for guidance curriculum that addressed specific student needs. Just a couple meetings ago, maybe back in November, Lisa Blockwitz had told us about some of the work that's begun with our counselors and refocusing some of our curriculum there to work on student needs. So Annette will be continuing to work on that curriculum and additionally review and analyze what we're doing within our counseling programs. There was conversation there about the need for a social worker, and Annette will be looking at really what our student needs are at this point and how do we meet those needs through our student services staffing. One side note, and this is a tough one. I guess this is awareness for administration to help us out with this always. There's two terms that we use regularly, co-curricular and extracurricular. Co-curricular, generally put, is an extension of the classroom. So your clubs that have that classroom relationship. I know that's very general, but it's board understanding and community understanding. So you have FBLA, you have FFA. Forensics could be an extension of that. You have things like solo ensemble, which are an extension of your music programming. Co-curriculars. Extracurriculars are more toward some of your athletic programming. Still kind of an extension of Phi-Ed and needs of our students there, but they serve a different role, a different competitive participation role. Those are the two differences. We had a discussion about that, and it's important for us to continue having that discussion so we all stay on the same language. I guess I would ask the help of you guys when you're presenting to us too, to, when we look at you funny, remind us of what those definitions are. Okay, short and sweet. That's the summary of where the board ended, and pass that back to you. So I'll give you the opportunity to update us on what you've gotten done in this short time. It's really only been about 2.5 weeks, but on any of those areas.
Okay. Well, first, just want to thank everybody who took part in these really, we started in, actually it was in June, and we met all the way through December, and want to really thank everybody again for the time that they dedicated, and looking at Kelly, because I can see her here. And then, so when the board made their responses to the recommendations, and on these responses, it says, for some of them, no additional focus needed at this time. I want to clear that up a little bit because we are still continuing to move forward with the 6 priorities that were originally created from the Launching a New Legacy. And this year, we are advancing into our next 3-year action plan from the original 3-year action plan. So when we talk about, opportunities for students and the community, the recommendations that were made that tie in with that and that would be priority number 4. And when we talk about extracurricular activities for kids and increasing those opportunities, that comes in that 3-year action plan under priority number 4. So when we say no additional focus, we already have that focus under priority number 4, and we will continue with those action plans, and that's still a priority. It's just not in addition to what we're already doing. So when we say no additional focus, it's just not another. We're still doing all of those 6 priorities. So I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that. So that 3-year action plan is coming very soon, as a matter of fact. Our administrators are meeting tomorrow to continue and say, okay, we did the 3-year, we're going to conclude, so where were we at? How did we do in that 3-year action plan? And now we're going to start with the next 3 years and really plan that out and what we need to do for those 3 years. The exciting things that we have done on some of the more specific, okay, Annette, you and your team will do these things, as Cindy was talking about, is that in regards to the facility study, that was very clear that that was an action that we would be moving forward. On Thursday, January 10th, the administration released an RFP, or a request for proposals, for architectural services, including a pre- and post-recommendation planning study. The packet went to 8 individual architectural firms that were with statewide exposure and specialization in these types of programmings and designs, and we will be expecting some bids back, or the bids back, by January 25th. We have a pretty aggressive timeline on what we need to do and how we'd like to move. And so those bids went out, and the request for proposals actually went out on the 10th. We expect them back on the 25th. Some things that we did within those timelines is, and I see Kelly again, but EUA was a firm that completed a study in 2011 and was a fairly comprehensive study. And the committee that Kelly and I apologize to everybody else, but I'm talking kind of to Kelly here, but we were on the same committee. And some of the things that we reviewed was really just a summary, and that study was very thick. And so once we looked more into that study, and I still haven't seen the complete full study, what we realized is that, and looking at other districts, is the study was so comprehensive that what we're requesting in this RFP is a firm to come in and update that study. Usually you do a comprehensive study like that like once every 20 years. And we just did this 9 years ago. So to do a study at that level really would be kind of like a waste right at this point. So we want them to come in and do an update to that study, especially in particular areas that the original committee was looking at and asking for. So we're excited about that. We do have a timeline, a pretty lengthy timeline that we have developed on where we would like the firm to go and how we would like them to go with that. We're looking at awarding a contract on January 28th. We're going to go into committee work from March until July of 2019. We are going to do another community engagement survey in July through October, because once we kind of take a look at everything, and we want to get that information out to the community and then get some more information back from them. We're going to do some more committee work November through December, and then move to the board with a recommendation immediately after that. Tomorrow, we are going to post an application process, and we're going to post it far and wide. Every type of communication that we have and every type of method that we have, Bill. Might even do a podcast again. I know how much the board loves my podcast. We're going to put it out there as much as we can for a Community Facility Advisory Committee. And we have certain positions that we have available. So anybody who was on a study team, we have a position for each study team, so one member from each study team. The facilities committee, because we already did a lot of the work with that committee, there's going to be 4 positions from that committee. We have representatives from employers in the community, a parent from each building, a teacher from each building, retirees, people who don't have children in the school, people who don't have children in a public school, different representation from the community. And we're going to post that out there as well. So we're going to let everybody know, here's who we'd like to see on our committee. And we're looking to start that committee then March 11th. We would actually have the committee come to the board and receive a charge from the board. Here's what the board is charging you to have as responsibilities for this committee. And then I kind of gave you the timeline for what that committee is all about. So that's the work that we've completed thus far. Haven't done a communication plan audit yet. That's next on the list, really, to get that going. Other than that, that's the response that the administration has taken so far to the board's response to the recommendations. Okay. We're excited. We're moving.
We've done a lot of work on those 6 priorities. And it is great that within those recommendations, there was a lot of work in those 3-year action steps that was already steps needed to accomplish those. So, yeah, thank you for the clarification. It wasn't that we're not doing anything. We've just all become very acutely aware of what those action steps are, so it's good. Questions really about Annette's update?
So, Annette, what are those 8 groups over the next couple of weeks? What do they have to present to us?
So the study teams,
I mean, that we sent out to 8,
Oh,
Oh.
the RFPs to the,
yeah.
so the architectural firm is going to, in the request for proposal, there were some pretty specific things that we're asking them for. So they're going to come back with everything that's in that proposal. We set up interviews, so anybody who's interested, the firms that are interested, need to set up a time to come in and interview with us. And so that's part of their process. And then they're going to give us their bid, and that's due on January 25th. So we gave them like a 2-week window. You've got to have it, but that's what they do. So, and pretty much, it wasn't a proposal that we were asking for with anything, that was out in left field. I mean, this is what these firms do, so. Okay.
yes. Okay, next up is WASB resolutions. And so these have been available for the board. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at them. But Kelly and Barb, as the legislative committee, I think you guys individually went through them. So I'll give you guys a chance to, I guess, bring to our attention. Normally, these have been passed through multiple committees, and we have had very few historically that we've had concern with. So I guess that's the approach that is the most efficient, is if there's any in the packet that you have concern with, let's talk about those, and then I'll open it up to anybody else to raise concerns about any that you haven't already flagged. So,
Okay, there's 22, and I stated, Kelly and I talked, and I said I would do the first 11 and just any concerns I have and just kind of, talk about them a little bit. Basically, the first resolution was just because things are outdated and because of Act 10. They talked a little bit about collective bargaining and so forth, and that's no longer, so they're striking that. So it's the strike aids, or the state aids and strikes would be taken out, and that makes sense. It's just something that is no longer relevant. The second resolution was reducing the number of school board members in a district, and that just allows different school districts to reduce the members in their school board if it's an odd number, and that's fine. The resolution 3 was student poverty and revenue limits. They're going to give local school boards the option to use any additional revenue. This change may, is to give more money if they have, spend more money on their, the students of poverty, free hot lunch or whatever. Next one is under community schools, and that is to provide some state funding for inclusive community schools, and we have that, don't we? We have different classes and so forth in our school district, and they will provide funding for that. They're gonna increase the funding for gifted and talented program, which makes sense to me. Competitive grants, they're no longer going to make you get people to apply for different grants and so forth. They're just going to give money to the district because a lot of districts can't get their applications in the deadlines and so forth. So they're just going to distribute the state funding to the school districts. Special education reimbursement will go up 60% from the prior year eligible costs in maintaining the fund. The resolution called for an increase in special ed due to increase in reimbursement rate, 60% of the prior eligible costs. It used to be 33. They're going to continue the school funding for library aid. This supports the abolishment of any sort of public or library aid or public school libraries, which is important. Reading inventories for students who haven't reached the 3rd grade level, reading level, there's going to be, because they feel that there's a high predictor of success in graduation if they aren't reading to proficiency by 3rd grade, and providing, I think, funding for this to have low achievement and reduced likelihood. I believe that's what it was. Did you see that, Kelly? Is that what it is? Okay, provide additional
Yeah,
funding for
it's
that.
it's the philosophy that we have unfunded mandates and expectations, but we don't give us
Right.
any monies to address those needs. So
Yeah. So that
it's a
was the
resolution
reading
that
introduction.
WASB supports that.
Yeah. So, and then the resolution 1910 was the private school aid voucher funding. And all publicly funded schools, including private schools receiving vouchers, must have the same accountability. And that makes sense to me, because if they're getting the funding, they should be able to keep up the standards of their tests and so forth, and they should require the same sort of requirements. And eliminating special ed vouchers, they aren't gonna give additional money to the private schools for special ed scholarship funding. It eliminates the special needs voucher program. And that's questionable. For some people, they may like that, but I feel that would be opening a whole can of worms. It would be difficult for the private schools to have so much money sent for the different costs and so forth.
So I'm hearing you say that 1 through 11 are reasonable for us
Yes.
to support.
Mhm.
Okay, so are you in agreement?
I'm
on
in
1 through
agreement
11?
that all of the resolutions she talked about, as well as all of the remaining 10 or 11 resolutions, I feel are reasonable for the board to support. I didn't feel any of them would adversely affect our school district. I would note that number 12 does add an Indigenous Peoples Day. It did not affect Columbus Day, the best I could see. I know that's a hot topic, but we are named after Columbus.
So you're
but
telling
that
me
would-
to verify the
I'm-
date of
right.
Indigenous Peoples' Day, and if it conflicts with Columbus Day, then
I'm not
you're
saying
close.
that. I'm saying we should teach history in a manner that it teaches.
So then we should have a board resolution that we recognize both. If
I'm
they're on the
not
same
saying that either. I'm just saying that we just need to to be cognizant of the fact that we are named after Columbus, and I don't see that changing. It would simply add another, there's like 12 days that they have to put on the announcements that today is such and such a day.
So-
And I think that's probably all we are doing
21.
to recognize those days. I would also note that, 19, the resolution 19 regarding transcripted credit from the technical colleges, I think that would be since the state went away from licensing of technical college instructors and so that defaulted then to the Higher Learning Commission accreditation. And in order to get transcripted bachelor's degree credit, you must have a master's degree or 18 advanced credits. Well, a lot of our teachers might have a master's degree, but they don't have a master's degree in business, or they don't have a master's degree in the subject field that they're teaching. They have a master's degree in curriculum and instruction or education or leadership or something along those lines, and not the subject area that they're teaching. So it's made it incredibly difficult for high schools across the state to offer that dual credit with the technical colleges. And I don't know, I think it's not to put blame on the school districts compared to the tech colleges. Maybe I will, but I think it's more of a school district problem because the technical colleges are not getting the income and the credits. It's more just what meets the technical college requirements based on our accreditation standards. And so I think that reducing that would be beneficial to our students potentially, if there's some classes that would be not a dual credit where they can receive the technical college enrollment as well.
Okay. Mike, Bill, I'll give you the chance if you had any concerns about any of them.
No, what I thought though, Cindy, do you want us, to our listening and watching audience, you want to just explain what you're going to be doing with those?
Yeah, so WASB is essentially our trade association, to put that in community terms. Wisconsin Association of School Boards. At the convention next week, they have a delegate session. Each school district who's a member of WASB can send a voting delegate. The resolutions that have been sent out have gone through their committees, their resolutions that were proposed by member school districts, or updates to existing resolutions, which really serve as the foundation of their lobbying efforts. Doesn't mean that any of them are going to ever become law, doesn't mean that any of them ever get adopted by DPI as requirements for us, or recommendations from any higher authority on what we do, but it does create the foundation for what WASB is working for. Each year, there's quite a few that get updated. A lot of them are updates on language, updates based on whatever, cost of living, cost of doing business, and so somebody has gone through and reviewed them and said, hey, this needs to be updated. They go through the proposals from districts go through a number of review processes, committee reviews, and then there's a recommended batch that will go to the delegate body next week. So this batch that Kelly and Barb took the lead on to review is what will go to the delegate floor next week. Last year we did have one on tertiary aid that was introduced at the last minute. So we got a nice crash course on that. Joe loved it. But there's opportunities for somebody to introduce something at the last minute through some very, very strict procedural processes at the convention. So that's what the moral of the story is with them. So thank you to you two for taking the time to become the experts in reviewing those.
Just want to clarify, I'm not urging a vote against Indigenous Peoples Day, just to set that
I gotcha.
record straight.
I gotcha. All right, so our position is to support all of them unless, obviously, if there's a substantial change on the floor, then, deal with that, our delegate deals with that accordingly. But as they stand, we're supporting all of them. All right, thus is how I shall vote. All right, we're going to move on to our board action. Consider the EL8 financial administration monitoring report. Why do I feel like I missed something? Nope, WSB other resolutions.
Good.
Nope, we're there. Open my other screen. No, I lost my agenda. I want to be here. Okay, this was presented to the board last meeting. I did have some feedback from board members for comments to be included on that cover sheet. And I've given you a handout. I kind of compiled that, and so I've given you a copy of that. I guess I'd start with that. If there's any questions or concerns about including that under board comments, or if there's anything else somebody would like indicated under the board comments. Kelly?
Oh, we have this comment that was handed out, and I think that's an appropriate comment to be included. I think especially with the short-term borrowing, not having to do that this year, I think it's not even just so much the interest cost, but the cost and the hassle of preparing all those documents and having bond counsel and whatnot review all of that to basically borrow money from Farmers and Merchants Bank. But, I mean, I understand how, state law works on that, but the cost is almost more than the interest finance charges on that. So I think that's a significant improvement that the district has made in that regard.
Okay.
Cindy, is it appropriate to read this in front of this group, this statement?
We can if we want.
Maybe it'd be good for people to know.
Sure. As it reads right now, after receiving monitoring reports for EL7, budgeting and financial planning, EL8, financial administration, EL9, asset protection, the board recognizes excellent work done in meeting the goals of the business department and improving the overall financial stability of the district, as evidenced through a recent improvement to the district's credit rating. Through work done in these policy areas to improve budgeting process, purchasing systems, and contracting, the district was able to increase the fund balance above projections in the 2017-18 fiscal year, and as a result, did not have to do any short-term borrowing for the fiscal year 2018-19. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Good with that? All right, so then we will move on to the report itself. The superintendent has submitted that as in compliance, and I will entertain a motion accordingly if you would like that to be in compliance, not in compliance, or in compliance with noted exceptions. That was a mouthful.
I move we accept the report as in compliance.
Second.
Motion by Bill, second by Mike to accept EL8 for financial administration as in compliance. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to the superintendent's report.
Okay.
We're going to start with open enrollment caps and our
Yes.
great calendar situation.
So, by state statute, the board will need to pass a resolution in regards to open enrollment caps and this is for new open enrollment applications only, and this is for regular education, by class seats, and special education. So if you remember, we did this last year, and so for Barb, this will be a new process, but we did do this last year, and what we are doing today is we're talking about the process, to remind you about the process. And because we just had our second Friday count for January Friday, and we continue it actually today, because there's 3 days that we do the enrollment count in January. So we're talking about the process today, and we'll bring the actual numbers to you on the 28th, so for the 28th January board meeting, so that you can pass the resolution there. So what I've provided for you in the in my memo this last week was just a reminder about what that process looks like, everything that we do as administration to prepare for the process. And I also provided for you a reminder of what the chart looked like so that you'll, when you see the chart on the January 28th meeting, it will show for you exactly what the grade level is, our maximum class size, or what we try to maintain as a maximum class size, the number of classes or sections in each of those, the total seats available, and then what our projected enrollment is for and then the number of available seats for regular education and the special education seats, and we base those on 11% as our percentage of special education. So we also talked about, I talked about in the memo, is the process that administration is now going through as we're looking at enrollment, as we're trying to do our staffing, and also making these projections for the open enrollment process. So that's just a little bit of a reminder and what we're looking at, and then the chart. The chart will be exactly the same, but it'll just have the the updated numbers for next school year. Okay.
Do you want to talk about the date that we have to have that to DPI?
The
And why we have to
well,
accept that in the next meeting?
Yep, so the number, or the second Friday count for January is due to DPI on the 25th. But we have to have, your January resolution obviously has to happen in January, so that's the 28th is our last meeting. So that's why we're gonna do we'll give you the numbers, and usually we're having our discussion today. We usually like to discuss, and then we have a board action at the next meeting. So that's why we're gonna.
So we'll get our numbers and we'll act on it all at once to meet the deadline. So, questions about the process?
Any questions on that?
So I know
Obviously, we'll do our verification. You know, we're still counting right now. We're making everything. We want everything to be as close as possible to what our actual class sizes are and making all of those predictions. But we have verifications that we need to do. So if kids weren't in seats, we make our phone calls. We do everything that we can possibly do to really verify those numbers and make those numbers. So we didn't want to bring numbers to you today that weren't going to be accurate. We wanted to make sure we have accurate numbers.
Okay.
Okay? Any questions on that?
Yeah. And this whole process, this last year worked good for you? I mean,
You know, short of people leaving or transferring or people moving into the district, I mean, you always have a little bit of that, but yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, especially for special education, the reminder is that because we do have increase in enrollment, we do want to put caps on, and which is what we did last year. Once we do that, then we cannot accept anybody into the district after we put those caps on for our special enrollment. And we have to remember that. It does put that contingency on us, but we have to do it because we do have increasing numbers. And it really puts a strain, especially for our special education department. If you just grow and we have, limited, we already have case loads that are full, and so without doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I collaborated with other directors through CESA 5 as to how they are looking at caseloads, and DPI does put out a caseload formula and steps to take to determine appropriate caseloads, and then they also consider the fact that our special ed services are provided within the classroom, which is additional planning and time needed from the teacher. So I've been able to go through the high school and the middle school numbers so far and use that formula, which has been really, really helpful to be able to support staffing needs and making sure that we really have the right staff given the not only the number of students in special ed, but also then the severity of their disabilities and taking that into account also. So that's been really helpful to go through that process.
Lisa or Annette, can I just ask, just out of curiosity, are caps common in the state of Wisconsin?
Yes. We're getting more challenging kids than we used to. Back in the day, we had many students that might have been in special education, but they just struggled with some skills. And now we're getting some pretty significant students, whether they're significantly medically fragile or just cognitively, that are really taking a lot of resources to best support and educate them in the educational environment. So we're seeing definitely an increase in the severity of students with disabilities.
But it's not just special ed caps. We've got caps on regular students as
Correct.
well. There's
Correct.
criteria for how many students you can take in. Obviously, there's capacity.
Yep.
We have neighboring districts who have been 0 open enrollments for qualifying reasons, and most of it is capacity in neighboring districts for quite a few years. And it's just been, will this be the 3rd year that we have to have something established, or is this the second
By
year?
state legislature.
Is it only the
Well,
second?
it's the second year that we've placed caps on it.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but it's a conversation that's definitely taking place across the state, especially in this area. Sun Prairie and DeForest for sure
Oh, yeah.
are, yeah. And when we get to those open enrollment requests, we talk again about the process. Last year we had a nice conversation about just to understand the process of waitlisting, notifying students if extra seats open up. So we'll come back to that and how that process works as well.
Can we make one thing clear, though? That these caps refer to new students that want to open enroll in.
Correct.
That the students that are already open enrolled in are sort of part of our own community.
You stay.
And they don't count against the new cap level, other than they're a body in the room just like everybody else.
Correct.
Yes,
Right.
Correct.
yes. Yeah, that's a great point, Bill.
Thank you.
If you're already a counted student next
you're
week,
here,
you
you're
have
here.
a spot
Yep.
for next year. Generally speaking, if you're open enrolled and yes, I just
Or do you have
confused
to
it.
reapply?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are
So,
some exceptions to
there-
that
yes,
rule.
it's-
Okay, generally speaking,
Generally
and if you have an exception to the rule, you need to talk to them.
We could talk more
I
about
don't
that
wanna go-
whole
we can
process.
We can go there.
Correct,
We
like
did
you
go-
had said.
We did go there, yes, when we
Yep.
did that. All right,
Yep.
we're gonna move on.
Okay.
To our new ELA courses, and I've got feedback from Mike's somewhere, so, okay,
Okay.
go for it.
All right, so Becky has been working with our English Language Arts Department at the high school and going through the whole process for renewing and reviewing and designing through the curriculum renewal process. And they have been working really hard at the whole process. And so she has tonight for us to talk quickly about 3 new courses that are being offered and are up for consent approval at the high school. English 3, Contemporary Literature, and Social Justice in Literature. Becky?
Yep, so the 3 new courses are a result of a process that really began last school year. As you know, the teachers have all been undergoing professional learning in the engagement model at the high school, and through part of that process started conversations about current coursework and really the curriculum renewal cycle where it overlapped allowed us to begin some revision work with there. And so last school year we began conversations about the department as a whole, about the sequencing for students. And really, as the first major step in the process was survey the students. You know, we want to provide courses that students want to take, that are standards aligned, and allow our students to have that guaranteed curriculum, regardless what pathway they take through our electives. And so from the student survey, the teachers began really rethinking the structure for the department, and that's where a lot of this came out of. In your board packet, there is a sheet that said English course descriptions on it, and what this sheet is probably the final vision of where we'd like the department to go. There's 2 courses on there that are would be dual credit courses with Madison College that you do not have in course proposals and we do not currently offer. So the written composition and the oral and interpersonal communication. And the reason we don't have course proposals coming tonight is because of the Higher Learning Commission and the new rules. And I have a teacher who is working towards 18 credits to receive accreditation, but are not there yet. So this is sort of the final vision. The 3 new courses are English 3, which would be a full credit course that would most likely be taken after English 2, which is a current course that students take in the sophomore year. And then Contemporary Lit and Social Justice came largely out of that student survey, and also a restructuring that would make our electives a much better balance between reading and writing and speaking, like a much better balance across the standards, because our current electives a lot of times are really writing heavy or really reading heavy. And so with them comes, if English 3 is approved, we would be taking major authors in modern lit out of the current sequencing. And then with social justice and contemporary lit, we would be looking at taking out myths and legends, science fiction, sports lit, and writing production, some of which have had a lot of difficulty, quite honestly, running over time. Writing production has not run, I don't think, for several years at this point, just because of lack of student interest. As part of our work this year, we've looked at other districts that are of similar size to look at the number of offerings of which they were able to sustain. And so the decrease actually, there's currently 12 courses. If you look at the course catalog for 17-18, we would be going down to 9 courses, which is a little bit more sustainable and a little bit more reflective of a little bit more in the ballpark of what other districts our size would do. Because we are unable to come with course proposals for the dual credit courses that we would eventually like to be able to offer, we are leaving communication arts and Write for College, which are currently in the course catalog as part of that sequence. So it still gives students an opportunity to work on those skill sets and standards. It just is not a dual credit course at this time.
Bill Kelly, questions? Barb and Mike? Is English 3 a requirement then, or is that an elective?
Sorry, currently based off of board policy and district policy, students are required to earn 4 credits in English. That's actually state law too, to get a diploma. But we do not have any requirements that say students have to earn the credit in specific courses. So students now, they come into high school taking English 1. English 1 leads to English 2 just on the structure, but if students do not pass those courses but are able to earn the credits through other systems currently and still with this is what would allow. So students, we would assume are going to take English 3 after English 2, but it's not a requirement.
Okay.
But 4 credits.
4 credits in English are a requirement to earn a high school diploma by district policy and state law.
Okay. So we've got 3 1-credit classes in 1, 2, and 3. We've
Yep.
got AP English, which is 2 credits.
Correct.
And then we've got a choice, it would be a choice of 5 different half credits.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay, got it. Just making sure I'm following the whole bundle. Yeah.
You've probably heard me ask this before maybe, but speech is a part of English too?
Speech and listening standards are embedded across many courses. English 2, back when I taught English a long time ago, about half the course was devoted to speech, but we do not do that anymore. They're embedded across multiple courses. or like those skill sets. It's not, speech skill sets are, and standards are embedded across multiple courses.
After the meeting, I'll be giving my speech from English too.
I wasn't your teacher then,
I
Kelly.
understand, Mrs. Dickham was my teacher, but I'm still gonna be delivering it outside.
How many note cards are you allowed, or is it memorized? Awesome, I look forward to that. All right, any other questions about English courses? All right, moving on to your HR report.
Thank you, Becky.
Thanks, Becky.
Thanks.
And I see Tony. Thank you for all your hard work, and good luck on finishing those credits so that we can get those dual courses in. All right. The rest of HR reports, so we have, we are finally full staff again for the custodial staff. So we have 3 custodians on the agenda tonight for approval for employment: Guy Smith, Tom Caldwell, and Randy Retzloff. And then we have 1 resignation at the high school. Marie Steffen has resigned. She has taken full-time employment at the state American Legion office in Portage. And that is my superintendent's report.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, moving on to the superintendent's consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion.
I move we accept the superintendent's consent agenda as written.
Second.
Motion by Bill, second by Mike to accept the superintendent's consent agenda as is. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the board consent agenda. We have minutes, we have our donations. I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of the board consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Kelly, a second by Bill to accept the board consent agenda as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. One quick thing under board management. We did, in order to meet, usually we do the ballot drawing for school board election order prior to this meeting. However, due to the calendar that had to be submitted by the second Tuesday, which was last Tuesday, so that order was drawn in district office with another number of people present to witness that. And our ballot order in April is Michael Bryan, David Fisher, Keith Lopnow. There are 3 candidates for 2 seats. Mike's seat is open and Mary's seat is open. Mary filed non-candidacy. So we have 3 candidates for 2 seats. There is not a need for a primary. So those 3 names will be in that order on the ballot for the general election in April.
Cindy, maybe we should say with the 2 other candidates here, Dave Fisher in the second row on the end, and also Keith Lopnow in the third
Red
row
in
on the
back.
end.
So, thank you for your interest. That's the quick summary of that. So at this point, the board has a couple of calendar planning things to take care of and debriefing. So I will excuse administrators at this point. Keegan, thanks for your work back there.
Lisa,
and
thanks. Beck,
we will see you at the beginning of the second semester.
see ya. Jake. Can't get it.
Right.
Thank you, everybody.
See ya.
Thanks.
See ya. Thanks. Oh, I know, Pam and that the newspaper person wasn't here.
No, he's in Washington DC.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Sarcastic when you said fantastic.
All right, there, multiple communications are out about the WASB Day at the Capitol in March.